Okay, brother. Um, I'll let you. I'll let you kick things off, man. You got a much sexier accent than I do.
All right, all right. So yeah, it's what can I say? So I'm a guy battling an eating disorder, and I came to terms with it in 2020, and I've spent now the last year in recovery and getting out there and sharing my story and just breaking that stigma because guys, we have emotions, we can share them, we can be open, we can be vulnerable, and that's become my mission. So I'm really glad that we were able to connect through that. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and it really resonates with me. So I'm really delighted to be here talking to you today. And I promise I will make the vowels sound as sexy as I can with my voice throughout this conversation.
Nah, man. I think it's an absolute beautiful thing. Like, you just owning it. You know what I mean? Owning the hard parts too. It's for as far back as we can remember, right? You've got to be this. Speaking from a male's perspective, you got to be this rock. You got to be this person that there is nothing wrong with them. Nothing like will ever make them feel sad, down, depressed in whatever way, like nothing can bother you. And I'm like, well, if you put a rock in the ocean, and the ocean being the analogy for life or the metaphor for life, put the rock in the ocean, like it's not going to do anything. But over time, it's going to wear down and it's going to turn into sand. It's
Hmm.
going to turn into nothing. And that's the way I think of like the whole male mental health scene, right? Is like, okay, like it's not going to do anything. We're going to be fine. Like we can take anything on the chin, but over time, we are absolutely destroyed. And I've just got to personally thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so fucking open and honest and turning around and be like, you know what? Like, I might be dealt a shit hand right now and going through something right now, but other people are too. And you know what? We're all in this together. And that's the beautiful thing of the internet. We can all share, not compare, right?
Right, right. I love to look at it as this. It's a connection rather than a comparison. And
Mm.
that's what it's been. That's how social media has changed for me because at the height of my eating disorder, I would go online and I'd compare myself and I'd sit there and say, "Hey, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough of whatever the person was I was looking at." And now I'm on there looking for connections. It's all about finding those common threads and we're all going through shit. We all have stuff going on in our lives, and that's a connection that we share.
Mhm.
And it's all different, but we all can be there for each other. It all just starts with kindness.
For sure, man. It's that basic human trait of empathy, right? Of being able to understand the feeling what another human being is going through. Like, it's a basic fucking trait, and most people have kind of pushed that to the wayside a little bit. It's all competition. It's all, oh, I've got to get one over on someone else. Like, no, 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 man. Like look around. Like, we're all in this together. And I think for me, the biggest eye opener for that would has been travel.
Mhm.
I'm 12,000 miles away from home. I'm literally the furthest place I can go from my hometown, apart from if I go to Fiji, but then I'd need to get a connecting flight. So I am the furthest place from home. And people are struggling with the same shit and saying exactly the same emotion, exactly the same words. And I'm like, wait, 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 hold on a minute. Like, we couldn't be any more different, but we are in the same boat.
Yeah. When I was going through everything, I thought I was alone. I felt invisible because there's not a lot of guys out there talking about mental health or eating disorders.
Yeah.
And then I got online and I started sharing my story. And suddenly I'm making connections with people in Australia and in the UK and in Germany and just all across the world. And it's incredible. It really makes you realize that there's a community out there, that there are other people that have completely different lives than you, completely different circumstances, but we all share those same things. We all share that battle. It reminds me of the power we have when we unite, when we come together and work to build each other up rather than compare each other and tear each other down. And it's so cool to live, I guess, in this era where we are connected and we've got the world at our fingertips because there's a lot of bad that can come from it, but there's also a lot of good because
Mhm.
we have the ability to connect with people that 30, 40 years ago would have never been possible. So it's really cool now that like in your situation, you moved across the world and
Mm,
did that. But I can reach out to people in New Zealand. I don't even have to move there to be able to connect with people there. So it's really cool to be able to use the internet and social media in that regard now.
mm. Yeah, it's a unique tool, right? And I think it's a beautiful thing, man. Like that's the whole reason why I like having conversations on this thing, right? You can create this connection with people that you, let's be honest, probably never gonna bump into each other. And if you do, you're just not gonna know anything about them. With
Right.
the whole, granted, it's a highlight reel on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever that is, but you at least know some sort of sustenance about that person. So you can like you've got something and a little spark to go off to then create that connection with, and then we're face to face. It's crazy. Granted, I can't, it's on a computer screen, but we're still face to face, and it's awesome.
Right, because if we would have passed each other on the street somewhere, say we're on vacation and end up being in the same city one day, we would have never touched base. We would have never connected and talked. So it's really cool that we have that opportunity now.
Mm, So what was the? I'm really interested to hear what was the thing that made you say, "Fuck it, I'm gonna start talking about this, and I'm gonna start putting this online." Like, what was that initial like that little spark?
Yeah, so I've always been a writer. I've always been passionate about writing. And as I was going through my therapy, one of the biggest concerns I had was telling my friends, opening up and sharing it with my friends that I was battling this eating disorder that for 15 years I had been concealing and hiding so much emotion and so much pain. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. So my therapist said, why don't you use your passion? Why don't you write? Why don't you write your story
Mm,
out if that helps you share it with your friends? So as I was writing the story, I went back and I reread it to myself. And it was in that moment that I gained self compassion for myself and I started loving myself because I
wow.
was able to see my story from a different perspective. Rather than actually living it, I saw it from like a third party point of view. And it was in that moment that I realized the power in my story because I was like, there's not many others out there like this. I've been asked, who are your role models when it comes to men who have spoke up about eating disorders or about mental health? And that list is basically non-existent because there's not a lot of guys out there talking about the things that I was going through. And that's when I realized that if there's power in my story, I need to get it out there. I need to share it not just with my friends, but with everybody, because I realized that there were other guys going through some of the same things I was going through, and they were struggling in silence.
Mm.
And maybe if I told my story, it would help them reflect upon their own lives and help them get their lives back the way that I've been doing it for the last year.
Man, that's fucking beautiful. Like gaining some strength from yourself. Granted, like I can connect and relate with the whole writing thing. Like I've never always been a writer, but like I am now, so I understand that. Like I can empathize with that. However, like the whole fact of you gaining strength from yourself and turning around and being like, no, Jace, like you've been through this, but you're still alive. You're still here. You're still kicking ass. You're still fighting this. You're still going. You know what I mean? You're still in the fight. You've not thrown in the white towel yet. Like you're still
Mhm.
here, man. That is so fucking cool to hear.
Yeah. I had a friend right after I shared my story with her, and she goes, you were in survival mode most of your adult life. And that just really resonated with me
Oof.
because it made me realize that I survived.
Mm,
And, I did accomplish something. And that right there made me realize that I'm enough because maybe life didn't go the way I expected it to. And it rarely does. But it didn't matter. Whatever life threw my way, I survived it. I overcame it. I can't explain how some days. I don't know how, but I did it. And that's why I wanted to get out there and share my story because I know there's other people who think that they can't survive. But, take it day by day and lean into yourself. Learn to love yourself. And that's where it starts. Once you can gain that love for yourself, there's so many doors open, so many opportunities come about, and you have an ability to make a difference. I think there's so much power in everybody's story, so it's not like it's just my story that's powerful. I think my neighbor's story is powerful, and anybody's story is powerful if they're just willing to share it.
I could not agree more. And I think as human beings, we relate to stories. We all love stories, right? As a kid, we want to go to a bed with warm milk, cookies, and a bedtime story. Like
Exactly.
everyone wants that, you know, where we read stories to spark imagination, to connect with children. Yet when we get to adults, we're just bigger children, you know, and we just have
Right.
more responsibilities on our shoulders. And hopefully we've matured a little bit since then too, you know, and can communicate a little bit better. But at the same time, like that, we're still the same species, so we're still gonna like relate and like the same things. And stories, man, stories is so important. Like I've always said, I want to be that old granddad in a rocking chair telling stories. You know what I mean? And that's where people relate to. Like kids love it, older people love it. Like, and showing stories of resilience and survival. Damn, that's got to be the biggest motivator and inspiration. Like, period. Like,
Mhm.
hey, X, Y, Z was dealt to me, whether it is self-inflicted or whether it wasn't, it doesn't matter. This is the story, and I survived it.
Yeah.
That man is absolutely incredible, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's why when I was coming up with the title for my book, I wanted to have survival in there
Mhm.
because it was just it's so important to me because I survived. And to me that's what the story's about. It's about a lot more than just an eating disorder. It's about everything life threw my way. Somehow I made it. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And yeah, just by sharing those stories, I hope that it really helps.
So talk to me. This book, like, what's it gonna be? What sparked you to write it down and kind of make it into a book?
Yeah, so I started with my blog and it was just bits and pieces. And then I realized that I needed to just have the full feast. I needed to put the whole story out
Mhm.
there and just share it because it was such a therapeutic experience for me to write. As I kept it just started off with a simple story of me eating a Happy Meal at McDonald's as a 5-year-old. And suddenly I kept writing and writing and writing. And as it just flowed out of me, I felt healing inside. And I just shared my entire story, losing my parents at a young age, being picked on for being overweight as a kid, how my unhealthy relationship with food started in high school and just kind of morphed as time went along, as I had health scares and as I had a falling out with my family. And as I overcame financial hardship, such as eviction and arrest, and just went through some really dark periods. And I wanted to show how all of those things kind of fed into my eating disorder and manifested as the eating disorder. So that's why I went back and I shared my whole story from that 5-year-old kid eating a Happy Meal to today. Because until the book is published in January, I'm still adding to it because my story is not done. My story continues, and I want to include those lessons and those experiences that I'm seeing in recovery now, and be able to just provide hope to other people out there who might feel alone right now, or might not feel worthy of help or valid now.
That's incredible, man. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is eating disorders can come from things so much more wider than food and the gym and vanity and all that. Like it, granted, that can be a contributing factor. It could be the whole factor for some people, which is, their story, but it's something that you can control. And if you're experiencing something at that period of time in your life where everything is up in the air and things feel like they're not in your control, like what's the easiest thing to control? Well, the things that you put inside yourself. So you're probably going to start controlling that, and that's where it will spiral down. And I think that's what happens to a lot of males, man. Like I've spoken face to face personally to a lot of individual males that have had the same similar story of the fact of everything's been up in the air, and they've been like, oh man, like, and then the next thing you know, I blinked and I was either eating so much or I just went the other way and lost so much, and it was just like, yeah, man, because you aren't controlling anything in your life at the moment, and the only thing you're controlling right now is like you either gone down the binge route and like that's like the comfort side, or you've been like, no, like I'm gonna control something and I'm just gonna restrict things, and then you go down the other side, and I'm like, yeah, man, like that's life conjuring up in you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The eating disorder is about so much more than food or weight or body image. There are so many other factors that contributed to it. And I think just as like a personal example for me, really when my orthorexia kicked in full force was after I had a close call with colorectal cancer at age 29, which
Wow.
is the same disease that took my dad. And it scared me because I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die at a young age. So I wanted to control everything I could about what I was putting in my body. So again, it was circumstances in life that were dictating what I was trying to control. And, I felt like my body was turning against me. So I wanted to reel it in as much as I could and just control as much as I could. So that's when I went to work looking online for the healthiest diets and what I
Mm.
could do to prevent cancer and all those miracle cures. And I fell for everything because I felt like I was losing control of the one thing I owned, my body. So I wanted to try to control it with my intake.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what kind of fueled the orthorexia to get going was that health scare that, again, it was something outside of my control that I then tried to get control through food.
So, how would you describe orthorexia to someone who has no fucking idea what it is and has no idea what eating disorder is? Like, what would you, like the complete layman's terms, how would you describe that?
Well, luckily, I can explain it pretty well because I was the same way. I didn't know what it was until months into recovery. Actually, I was
Wow.
diagnosed with unspecified eating disorder, so I didn't even know what orthorexia was until months later. But basically, in layman's terms, it is an addiction or an obsession with healthy, clean eating.
Hmm.
So in my case, I had a lot of food rules where there were all these good foods and bad foods. And over time, all the good foods slowly started becoming bad foods. I think when people think of healthy eating, they're like, oh, you probably ate a lot of fruits and vegetables then. Not the case. If you look hard enough online and stuff, you can find bad stuff about fruits and vegetables. So slowly, even some of those started ending up on the bad list. And it's just one thing after another gets cut out from your diet until you're down to just basically the bare essentials, where you can barely eat anything. So my meals were often the same things every single day because those were the only quote unquote safe foods left for me to eat. So in my case, it was just that addiction, that obsession with being the healthiest I could possibly be when it came to eating.
Wow. Like, I really do think the male mind is like erratic, right? It's, we are the dumber part of the species for sure. Um, and we can get addicted to things or some premise or something so fucking easy. Like again, the amount of people I've talked to and they fell down the ED route, they fell down the drugs route, the alcohol route, the gambling route, the whatever, or just training as well. Like I'll see it in the gym too. Like, and I'm like, look, dude, like, man, you don't need to be in here for 5 hours. You're not a professional athlete. Like, go home. Oh,
Yeah.
but what else am I gonna do? Like, I need to be here. You don't need to be here. Like, that's an addiction. And then I think that's just a plaster on a broken leg. Like we're covering something up that we're not addressing. And I know there's things for me, right, where if I start getting obsessive over some things or I feel like I get addicted to some things because I am hand on heart, I get addicted to things so fucking easily, so easily that I just need to be able to rein myself in. Um, I usually have to sit down and give myself a rain check and be like, all right, mate, like what's going on? What are you not addressing at this moment in time that you need to figure out? First of all, how you feel and go
Mhm.
through that and actually feel the emotion. And then second of all, figure out where you're going to go from there. And too many times, like males in particular, we just cover things up with addiction.
Yeah, completely, completely. I went down the road with alcohol.
Mm,
And that's kind of been an unintended result or benefit of my eating disorder treatment and recovery is I have finally gone sober
wow.
and broke that abusive relationship I had with alcohol that I didn't even realize at the time. It was one of those where, I was blind to the fact while I was dealing with it And then as recovery went along, I realized that I had these other vices too. So it was more than just the eating disorder. I was also dealing with that abusive relationship to alcohol. But I also have that addictive mindset. It's a very black or white way of thinking for me. I
Yep.
tend to go to the extremes. It's either all or nothing. So if I'm feeling something, if something I think brings me pleasure, I just dive in full force to that. And a lot of times that has unhealthy consequences.
Oh, 100%. Like 100%. It's literally like you're speaking for me, you know? Like males go so far and so quickly into something which can be incredible because you can create some amazing things and do some amazing things. But at the same time, like it seems like we don't stop to assess whether this is going to be a constructive or a destructive avenue, and we just go fucking full pelt towards it, and then you like turn around 3 months in, a year in, or 20 years in, you're like, oh my days, like I've shouldn't have done that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like I think about the examples. So I used to work at a horse racing track, and we had a horse injure his leg. But rather than stop running, a lot of times horses will continue to run, even though they're injured, because they don't feel that pain. They just keep going.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like us males, where
Hmm.
it's like we can be broken, we can be injured, but if our head's set on something, we just keep going, not even paying attention to the additional damage that it's doing to us. And I think of that the same way. I mean, any athlete, if they get out there and they injure themselves, sometimes that adrenaline kicks in and they just keep going. And that's almost the mindset that us men have constantly when it comes to anything. No matter the pain that we're in at the time, it's like head down and just keep going, regardless of what additional damage happens.
Mm. Well, you look at how we were spoke to as a kid. You look at what quote unquote society will tell us. You look at mainstream media or whatever the fuck you want to look at, and everything says you need to be this rock. Like going back to what we said previously, you just need to be this tough cookie that nothing can bash around. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, everything, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Like I think of it in the sense of like I've gone down the whole spirituality route. My mum's a spiritualist, and I've just given it more attention and time as of late. Um, and I'm thinking of it like, okay, masculine and feminine energies. Okay, cool. Well, that's part of a wider bracket, and that wider bracket is being a human being. And I'm like, well, if we all want to be a human being, we probably need to know both. It
Yep.
to me that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I've kind of gone balls deep on one side for so many years. I probably need to give the other side a bit more attention to. And then you see like the friendships, the relationships, the connections around you just then develop into some beautiful things because you're actually able to one, feel what's going on, and two, communicate what's going on rather than just like zipping yourself back up and be like, nope, I got this, which then inevitably gets gets you in a bad place.
Yep. Yeah, the relationships, they get so much deeper, and it's so
Mm,
cool to be able to hang out with my buddies now. And we can still go out and watch a game, but there's a deeper connection there. It's more than just hanging out to watch a game now, because I know if they're going through something, they can feel comfortable sharing it with me. And it's the same way for me. If I'm going through something, I'm not ashamed to talk about it anymore, because I was a closed book for so long. Yesterday, I posted something interesting on my blog about when I was in second grade and I was stung by a bee at recess. And I hid that pain from my teacher and from my classmates because I was embarrassed. I did not want anybody to know that I was feeling pain, that I was injured, that I was hurt. So I sat there in my school for hours that afternoon. Just I couldn't concentrate on anything because the pain was just enormous. And it wasn't until I got home that my parents saw that the stinger was still in there and pulled it out. And as soon as they did that, the relief was instantaneous. And it just, to me, that is the perfect analogy for what a lot of us guys go through. We encounter that pain. And even as a second grader, I was scared to admit that I was in pain because I had to be the tough guy. I couldn't be the crybaby because I was a boy. So it's like as soon as somebody recognizes that pain, though, the relief comes right away. Because as soon as my parents saw that, as soon as I shared that with them, I started feeling better. And it's just, to me, that's the same theme that played out in my adult life, where there was just all of these bee stings going on internally, but I was just hiding them because I didn't want to share them with anybody.
Like, let's just go back, like second grade,
Yeah.
like that's gotta highlight we have an issue, right? Like in second
Yeah.
grade, how old are you gonna be in second grade?
7 or 8 years old. Yeah.
And you're thinking, no,
So,
I've got to be this tough guy. Like you're 7 or 8 years old. Like that is insanity.
yeah. It's upsetting because I know that it's happening right now in our schools,
Yeah, man.
and it's one of those things where, like I had mentioned earlier, I was overweight as a kid, so I was already the fat kid. I was already picked on for that. So the last thing I wanted to do was admit any pain or any weakness around any of my classmates, because then I would be the crybaby too.
Hmm.
And it was just those labels and those the bullies and the stigmas that exist even at that age, where I had consumed it in the media and heard other people talking about it. That, as a boy, I hid it and just tried to cover it up.
That's that's so sad, man. But at the same time, we've got to be able to take the lesson from that, and we've got to be able to talk better and act better around young males, right? And something that I think about a lot is how many times do we go up to a young male and be like, "How do you feel?" and then ask why. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, Jace, like, how do you feel, mate?" And a lot of the time, you're gonna be like, "Fine," or "All right." Like, I don't really know. They don't know how to feel. Young males don't know how to feel, and if you don't teach them, we're gonna grow up into adult males, and we still don't know how to feel. And then everything, our internal programming and external programming tells us to be aggressive whenever we feel something because we don't know how to deal with it. And then we wonder why the male part of the species is just fucking aggressive. You're like, well, they know nothing. All they know is how to fight. And everything in their head and everything outside of their head is telling them if the answer is, I don't know, fight it. If the answer is no, fight it. If the answer is yes and you can fight it still. You're like, well, that's that's just that's an idiotic way of like dealing with things. Like we have developed spoken language, written language, all these different ways of communicating for a friggin' reason, not just so ladies can figure things out and then just go about some things and then develop the race on that side. I'm like, no, we need to pick up the slack here. We need to pull our weight, and it starts off with doing the hardest thing, and the hardest thing is to open up. And fuck, dude, that's
So,
hard.
yeah, it's hard because I was the same way for a long time. The only thing I would express was anger or aggression.
Hmm.
And even now, over the last year, there'll be times when that's what I think I'm feeling. And I'll sit here, give myself some space for a few minutes. And then I realize, oh no, I'm sad about this, or I'm hurt by this. It's not anger, it's not aggression, but that's the only thing I knew was acceptable for the longest time. And I think it's ironic how, people will toss around, oh, stop being like a girl, stop being girly to guys, as like it's an
Mm.
insult.
Mm.
And some of the strongest people I know are women.
Mhm.
So the last time I checked, there's nothing wrong with being girly or acting like a girl, because they're strong. It's we sit here though with all these labels and try to, again, compare each other and tear each other down rather than build each other up. And it's up to us men to really pick up the slack right now and to speak out and to say, hey, it's okay to not be okay as a
Mhm.
guy. It's okay to have emotions. And if you're going to call me girly, because that label means nothing to me. I'm
Mhm.
proud of who I am and the way I feel.
100%, man. Like the whole premise of a male human being not having the ability to feel is just idiotic.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, if if we cut, we all bleed red. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
when we're all gonna feel that sting. So we all feel. We all have the capability of feeling emotions. If you lock it behind closed doors, that's fine. for the short term. Medium term / long term, those skeletons are going to come barging out of that closet and going to absolutely wreck you. And I I speak from experience, like I appreciate your honesty, so I'll meet you with some of the sense of the past like 18 months of being here is, see, before I even got here, I went through a time where I lived in my car. I went through a time where I've lived in a couple of gyms. I slept on the couch upstairs. You know, things have been pretty rough. But I get here and I end up living in a gym again because things get again rough. But I'm on the other side of the world, and these past 18 months has probably been the hardest in the sense of I have had realizations with holy fuck, man. All those things way back when? Yeah, you never dealt with them. You never spoke about them. You never even spoke about them to yourself. And now they are causing you to do shit that you wouldn't do normally. Like for example, the easiest example to kind of to use is didn't grow up in the greatest of areas. And I could hear people trying to get in the house, you know what I mean? Trying to rob you. Anyway, I hear a noise in New Zealand. I mean, this place has no crime. Right? It's a beautiful place. I hear a noise, maybe like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And next thing you know, I blink and I'm outside in the street in my boxers holding a knife because I think someone's trying to kick in the door. And I'm like, I literally blinked. I didn't know how I got the knife. I don't know how I got out of bed. I can't remember anything else. I'm outside. I'm holding this thing like ready to go for it. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on, mate? Like, what are you doing? I was like, you're the crazy man outside. There's no one else there. You're the dude. You're the crazy man. Go back inside.
Yeah.
Obviously, put that away. And I'm like, right, okay. I need to dig out some issues and that needs addressing because it's making me do some fucking weird shit. And I don't even know I'm doing it. You know what I mean? And you will realize you've done it after the fact.
Oh yeah.
And that made me sit down and be like, all right, Alex, you're gonna have a long and deep conversation with yourself, and it's gonna feel really shit. You're actually gonna have to feel emotions that you should have felt 20 years ago. You're gonna have to go through the processes that you should have done 15 years ago, but you're gonna have to do it now, man, because this is not good. And you want to be a better person for everyone else, for yourself, for other people, your family, people that you bump into on the street, and then just to create those connections, right? And yeah, man, like that's a really hard realization to be able to like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back into that grave and dig up those skeletons that are buried and kind of try to forget about, but it doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. And I think
No.
the best piece of evidence to be able to prove that fact is the suicide rate, man.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, yeah, they dealt with it for 40 years, but they're no longer here.
Hmm.
So there's clearly an issue and
Right.
we need solving.
Yeah, it is. It's heartbreaking. The people that we've lost, the people that we've not been there for, and oftentimes they seem like the happiest people too, from the outside because they're masking it. And to me, we have to do better. We have to be kinder because we never know what the other person is going through. And that's why, when you ask somebody how they're doing, I ask them several times because I try to cut through because usually that first time you're only going to get I'm fine, I'm good, but we all have things in our past that we have to deal with and we have to confront, and it's a very humbling time. It's a difficult time to be able to hold that space and to connect with yourself, and there's going to be tears and there's going to be hurt and there's going to be times where your pride takes a hit, but it's worth it because that's what healing is. Healing is not easy, it's not always fun. I'm on a journey of recovery and healing right now, and there are good days and there are bad days, and I'm not afraid to talk about those bad days because that's part of the process. I can learn from those bad days, I can grow from those bad days, but sometimes I have to go through some tough stuff to get to where I'm at. And to me, the key is holding space, being able to hold space for myself, whether that's, journaling or just taking a walk or just doing something where I can just connect with myself. And rather than run from those things, just fully embrace them head on and realize, hey, it's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to be upset about the way this went. Because if I run from it, it's just going to get worse down the road. And I'm going to have that moment like you, where I'm standing in the street, my defense is fully up because I'm doing things and not even thinking about it. And that's how it was for me. I used to, at the height of my eating disorder and my mental illness battle, I was, snapping at people. I was just screaming at people and I would go off on them and not even realize it until later, until after the fact, because I was just so consumed by all these skeletons that were in my closet, all this pain and this hurt that was inside, that I couldn't see the way that it was actually causing me to react and respond to the world around me. And to me, that's why we have to do better when it comes to being kind to others, but also kind to ourselves. We have
Mm,
to say, hey, it's okay to go through this. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to be sad. Because if we don't start being kind to ourselves, it is really hard to be kind to others.
for sure, for sure. And I've noticed that usually people give out to the world what they feel like they need,
Mhm.
and it's the whole line of clowns are all sad inside. Like Robin Williams is the fucking beautiful example, right? He is arguably or was the funniest man alive at the time, and gave out joy and laughter and happiness and made people feel that for a short period of time because he didn't have the capability of feeling that himself, because he didn't want to make people feel how he felt inside. And I think that's a really important point for people to just take a second and like have a little think over, in the sense of, all right, what are those people around me, or that person in the shopping center that I bump into who's working at tills that seems super, super happy all the time?
Mhm.
Can I dig a little deeper and scratch below the surface? And can I try and give back to them a little bit? Because that little interaction, that little 5 minutes, that 30 seconds, or that half an hour is going to seriously brighten up someone's day.
Yeah, yeah, it can change a life. Just 30 seconds of kindness. It really can. And, I think about my own journey. I used to be the jokester, the happy guy,
Mm,
the loud, funny guy, trying to make everybody laugh. But on the inside, I was going through pure hell, and nobody saw that because I masked it. And that was part of the reason why I was so scared and nervous to tell my friends, because I was like, they're going to think I'm a fraud. They're going to think I've been lying to them for years, being this funny, happy guy all the time, when I'm really going through a lot of stuff. And it was the exact opposite response. My friends embraced me when I was authentic. They weren't like, oh, you're fraud, you're lying to us, how could you hide behind these masks? They were so grateful when I took that mask off and revealed who the true Jason was.
mm,
And I think that's a big key right there, is that people should never be afraid to be their authentic selves or worry about how people are going to respond.
mm.
Because if you're true to yourself, the world will come to you. The world will embrace you. And that was one thing that held me back for quite a while during my recovery, was just that fear of taking that mask off, of actually being my true self rather than this character I had been playing for so many years.
I'm I'm really glad you said that. I really relate to that. I actually made a poem called Masks, and it's something that I've thought about for a long time. And if I assess the circle around me, the inner circle, the wider circle, the many different jobs I'll do, and I think, holy fuck, like I'm literally playing different characters here, and they will all tell me they know me, and they'll all write down characteristics, and they'll all be wrong. And I'm like, no, man, like you know what I want you to know, and you also know the character I'm adopting to do said role or to help said person. And that mask analogy is, yeah, really hit home for me, man. Like when you finally take it off and you're at home, like you feel so fucking alone,
Yeah.
because everyone knows the faces of all the masks. Everyone knows the Jason, the happy go Larry guy, the guy who's quick wit, the guy who's this, that, or the other. They don't know the deep thinker, the lonely guy, the person who's struggling, the one who's like super down, cannot even say hello or get up. Like they don't know that guy. And also what I found, the superficial relationships around, they'll be pissed off when you don't wear the mask. They're like,
Hmm.
why? What's going on? Like, bro, oh, there's a problem. Have I done something? Why are you annoyed at me? I was like, listen, man, like, I'm just not wearing that mask. Like, I'm being me. And if you're not okay with that, man, see you later.
Exactly. Exactly. And I've had to say some tough goodbyes over
Mm,
recovery because there's been people that, again, it goes back to that philosophy where when I'm on something, I go full in on it. And that's how I am with my friends. But with some friends, I've had to say goodbye. Even with some family members, I've had to cut the cord because they don't appreciate who I am when the mask comes off. They want that fake Jason. They want that actor Jason who's playing a different role. And, I can only be me. That's all I want to be now. For a long time, I was a one man show with all these different characters going on. And I'm tired of that. I
mm.
want to just be me. And it's so nice, when I'm getting ready to go out to a social event or something like that, just interacting with my friends. I don't have to sit there and game plan. I don't have to strategize how the conversation's going to go or what kind of mask I'm going to put on today. I can just show up, and it's such a freeing feeling. But along those lines, sometimes it does come with those tough goodbyes.
Man, I'm so grateful for the internet because, like, the connection I feel right now is fucking. I can't really explain it. Like that is exactly who I am. That is exactly what I've done for a long, long time. And like I will not. Drugs is not my thing. Like never has been, never will be. It's just not my thing. But I will do like coffee, which is technically a drug, right? But I will. I remember times where you'd have to go to social events, and I would wire myself on caffeine just so I can put that mask back on because I'd be so fucking tired.
Yeah.
I'll be like emotionally tired, not just physically because training or working or whatever, just emotionally, like I've got no energy for people. And I would just absolutely neck a coffee and I'll be like, woo,
Mhm.
let's go. Like, let's start cracking some jokes again. And you think back, man, you're like, that's really sad, man.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
really sad.
Yeah. See, rather than a coffee for me, it was a beer.
Hmm.
It's the same way. Once I could get drunk, I could put that mask back on pretty easy.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's nice to not have to do that anymore.
For sure, being able to open up and you touched on it earlier when you like you can get those deeper conversations, you can get those deeper connections with people, and like the the places you end up going is by far way better than anywhere you could have gone before. You know what I mean? Like you can get some fucking beautiful, beautiful friendships, connections, whether it's romantic, platonic, it doesn't matter. Like business, in work, out of work, like you can get some beautiful connections with other human beings because you've just been like, you know what? I'm gonna tell you the truth with no bullshit sprinkled on top. And the people that are real respect that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been launching my blog. When I first did it, I thought I was doing so just to raise awareness. And then I started making the connections, and
Mm,
it's been life changing because a lot of these people, like we said, I would have never met them had it not been for the internet or social media. And now these are the people I look forward to chatting with every day, or just catching up once a week or something. It's just establishing those relationships, establishing those deep, authentic connections. There's no way to explain it because it was something for a long time I didn't think was possible. For a long time, especially talking to another guy and having a deep connection, especially when we're talking about our emotions, I didn't think that existed.
mhm,
And then in the last 6 months or so that I'm realizing that it does exist, and
mhm.
it is pretty cool.
The the biggest strength that you can do for a male is be vulnerable in front of other males.
Mhm.
Like that's something that I've realized over the years is like you can open up to a woman and like that's fine, like because you understand they're gonna attack it from a feminine energy side, but to open up to another male and you don't know whether they're gonna attack it from the well, just toughen up, blah blah blah, and that like uncertainty, that's the hardest thing you can do, man. But if you're able to do that, you've just displayed so much strength.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Because it's scary as hell to
Mm.
open up to other guys still. But I take that risk, and like I say, the strongest guy in the room has nothing to do with how much he can bench or what he can lift. It has to do with if his heart is open, and that's how I live my life now. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm proud of it.
That's absolutely beautiful, mate.
Yeah, it reminds me like when I was in school, I had a gym teacher make fun of me for being sensitive, called me a sensitive boy. And I wore that as a shame for years. It was a disappointment and embarrassment. And now it's a badge of honor. Now I'm proud to be called a sensitive guy because I would much rather be that than the alternative. I no longer want to be the closed book,
Mm.
the guy that society and stigmas try to tell me I should be. I want to be the sensitive guy, the guy who's open and honest.
Fuck that gym teacher, man.
Yeah,
Nah, that's it.
totally.
It's funny. Those little comments as a kid, like, can stick with you and can end up altering your brain chemistry and the way you think. Like when you reach adolescence or even adulthood, like it's really, really important youth development to watch your mouth, especially directed towards an individual if they feel singled out, and it's like, nah, this is like a problem with you. Like that's that's not going to be good for that child's development. Like you've seriously taken a screw out of their head, and that's just going to end up spiraling into something a lot bigger.
Totally. Completely agree.
Brother, I really, really appreciate your time.
All right. Yeah, this has been an awesome conversation, and hopefully it's the first of many because I feel like we covered a lot, and we could probably talk all day about this. So yeah, I really appreciate this, and as we've said several times now, it's incredible to be able to connect with you thousands and thousands of miles away.
Mm,
So I feel the connection right now here too. So yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you so much for inviting me here today.
that's awesome, man. Like you're always welcome for a good conversation over a coffee. Like let's just come in, chat some shit. Like always welcome, and the door's always welcome whenever the borders fall like an iron curtain, and we can finally travel again. Like I said, Denver's somewhere I want to go, and New Zealand is a pretty cool place. So get your ass down there. I'll show you around.
All right, sounds good. And yep, that offer stands here in Denver too. So you come in the summer, we'll go hiking. You come in the winter, we'll go snowboarding and skiing. So
Nice.
it's fun to do around here. So
Sounds
yeah,
great.
hope to see you.
Thank you, brother. Have a great day.
Yeah, take care.
See you later, man.